It's 5:55 and your West Shore home. First alert Skycam from Elizabethtown shows a dry Broad Street and those northwest winds funneling in colder air coming right down Broad Street. So a heavy coat, I think, is a must-have as far as your school day checklist if you're up and at 'em early. Do you agree with me? 20s at the morning bus stop, enough of a wind to make it feel more like the teens. The sun, it's nice, a lot drier today, but that wind takes an extra bite out, or already cold morning, I should say, and lower 40s in the afternoon. Okay, that's something. Tomorrow, Friday, a little bit more gains, but the weekend, cold snap front and center Saturday and Sunday. Looking ahead to next week, milder and warmer, and I do foresee some 70s before next week is done. A million miles away from that right now, Kim, 20s with feels like values in the teens. Just to, add proof. Back to you.